Hi, everybody, and welcome to Love Fraud Live. Our brains are incredibly complex with distinct neural circuits that handle specific functions. This creates problems when you're dealing with an abuser. I'm Donna Anderson, author of LoveFraud.com and host of the True Love Fraud Stories podcast. Tonight, I'll explain the biological reason why it's possible to keep loving someone even if the person is abusive. At the end of this short presentation, I'll answer your questions. So, let's get started. Perhaps you've had the following experience. Your new beau showered you with so much attention and affection that you fell in love. Then, either slowly or quickly, your partner became deceitful, mean, disparaging, and maybe even violent. You were shocked, angry, and heartbroken, so you distanced yourself. But after a while, your memory of the bad behavior faded, and you just thought of the good times. You feel like you still love the abuser, and you want to reunite. How is this possible? When your romantic partner lies, cheats, betrays, exploits, or abuses you, how can you ever forget that, and why would you return for more? Well, the explanation is rooted in biology. Dr. Leanne Leadham is a psychiatrist and professor of counseling at the University of Bridgeport. She explains exactly what happens in the free Love Fraud webinar called Your First Step Towards Real Recovery from Narcissistic Abuse and Trauma. Essentially, when you are in love with an abuser, you form two different images of the person in your mind. One of the attentive, affectionate man or woman with whom you fell in love, and the other of the destructive person who hurt you. Our incredibly complex brains have many neural circuits. A circuit is a set of interconnected components that serve a specific function. For example, we have a brain circuit that deals with love and pleasure. This is different from the brain circuit that pays attention to threats, abuse, and fear. So Dr. Leadham says that in the context of abuse, the image that your mind forms of the person that you love is stored in two different brain circuits. They are literally in two different areas of the brain. In your brain, therefore, the loving partner and the abuser don't feel like the same person. So this affects the psychological bonds that you experience with him or her. A relationship with anybody is essentially a psychological bond that we form with another person. The bond forms in the beginning of the involvement because of pleasure. Our brains actually change to accommodate this psychological bond. So Dr. Leadham says that when you feel like you love someone, part of that person is in your brain. If you're involved with a sociopath, sooner or later, your partner will become abusive. That's just what they do. He or she will deceive, exploit, or betray you. So, what happens? The bad treatment you experience has the perverse effect of strengthening the psychological bond that you feel. And over time, this can turn into a trauma bond. So there's one image that's stored in the circuit where you feel love for that person, and there's another image stored in the circuit where you experienced abuse from that person. When you're abused or hurt, the incident is fresh in your mind, and you distance yourself from the abuser. But after some time, the pain from the hurt wears off. And guess what happens? The love circuit takes over again. Dr. Leadham says that when the love circuit is active in your mind, you don't remember the pain. And the emotion associated with the abuse is gone, and you can't access it. Because of this biological reality, you still love the abuser. This is completely normal. And there is no quick fix for your split brain. Dr. Leadham says that the only way to cope is to understand cognitively with your intelligent mind that you have two separate people living in your head. One is the person that you thought you were in love with, and the other is the abuser. They're stored in different parts of your brain, and it's very difficult to bring the two together. Difficult, but not impossible. The solution is to overcome the sociopath's gaslighting and see the true facts of your situation. So, how do you do that? Well, I'm going to take a minute to talk about Dr. Leadham's fabulous program that teaches you what to do. This is the first treatment protocol developed specifically for overcoming the trauma of narcissistic abuse. Dr. Leadham created this revolutionary approach utilizing the skills training of dialectical behavioral therapy, or DBT, and tailoring it to the experience of survivors like you. We're really proud to offer you this groundbreaking and cost-effective program for true recovery. It's called Skills Training for Recovery from Narcissistic Abuse, Gaslighting, and Toxic Stress. So, if you truly want to recover, I suggest that you check it out. There's a link in the window below this video. Biology and trauma bonding may be telling you that you still love the abuser, but you know the person is bad for you. Dr. Leadham teaches you to use your wise mind to overcome your love for the abuser and to do what is truly best for your health, safety, and for your life. So, that's the presentation for tonight. If you want in-depth advice for your own situation, I do offer personal consultations. I can also help you with your emotional recovery through guided mindfulness and Reiki. If you'd like to know more, please go to lovefraud.com/talk to Donna. I also want to make sure you know about my other podcast, the True Love Fraud Stories podcast. In this one, I interview people about their experiences with sociopaths, and then I talk to experts on the topics that come up during their stories. So you can listen to that one wherever you get your podcasts, and also on YouTube and YouTube Music, or at lovefraud.com/podcasts. So finally, please subscribe to Love Fraud Live. When you do subscribe, you'll automatically be notified about all my new videos. Plus, by subscribing, you'll boost the distribution of Love Fraud Live, so you'll help to spread the word about all the dangerous sociopaths who live among us and in our brains. So if you want more information about love fraud, you can also subscribe to our newsletter. You'll find many helpful links in the window below this video. So now I'll take a look and see if we have any questions. Okay. Well, not yet. So I thought that I would discuss a little bit more about the trauma bonds, and particularly what causes a trauma bond. And essentially, there are two factors in a relationship that leads to a trauma bond. And one is that it's a power differential, and the other is that intermittent good and bad reinforcement. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, a power differential. What that means is that one person in the relationship has more relational power than the other person does. And this can be looked at in multiple ways. You know, perhaps the person has more money, or has more social status, or is simply more aggressive. Another way to look at the power differential is that one person simply is less committed to the relationship. Typically, whichever person is willing to walk away is the one who has more power in the relationship because it's not as important to them, whereas the other person for whom the relationship is more important is willing to do more to accommodate and to hold the relationship together. So anyhow, someone who has more money, more wealth, more status, or simply doesn't care as much, that person typically has more power in the relationship. And then the other part of how a trauma bond forms is because of intermittent good and bad reinforcement. And what that means is that, you're involved with this person, and sometimes you behave in a certain way and you get reinforced. The person, shows love and affection. And then other times you behave in exactly the same way and you get put down or criticized. So you never really know what you're going to get when you do anything in the relationship. And so what happens is that you just keep trying and trying and trying, keep hoping that you'll get the good reward, that you'll get affection, love, and essentially whatever you saw in the beginning of the relationship. So this combination of the power differential and intermittent good and bad reinforcement is what creates a trauma bond. And if you had like Psychology 101, you may remember that intermittent reinforcement is the most powerful kind of conditioning. It's what keeps you keeps anybody. It keeps a lab rat, going after food. But that type of conditioning is very powerful. So this also explains why people who are in a typical domestic violence situation have such a hard time getting out of it, because what happens is they have a terrible experience. Well, first, actually, the relationship is begun through love and pleasure, and then something happens to cause fear and anxiety in them, some type of terrible experience, and that actually makes them feel more attached to the relationship. And then they try and kiss and make up with the person relents, they reconcile, that strengthens the trauma bond again, and it just keeps going around and around and around, and that's why it's so difficult for people in these situations to get out of a bad relationship. So the other thing that I wanted to draw your attention to, I mentioned a little bit about the True Love Fraud Stories podcast. We just posted a new one last week, and the title of it is it's an interview with Mandy Friedman, and the title is Guilt is a Red Flag. And Mandy Friedman is a licensed professional clinical counselor, and she's a good friend of Love Fraud, has also created multiple webinars. But she talks about how sociopaths typically use guilt to control the person that they're involved with. And this, of course, happened in our previous previous podcast, where we had a girl called Avery who was, kept feeling guilty because her husband, Jonathan, kept making her feel guilty and telling her that he was going to kill himself because of her. So that's the title of the podcast. He says he'll kill himself because of me. But anyway, so because of that situation, I asked Mandy to discuss guilt in relationships, and she does, and it's excellent. So essentially what she says is that guilt is a red flag, and it means one of two things. Either it means that you're being manipulated, or that you're playing old tapes from another time that you were manipulated. So that's why if you start feeling guilty in your relationship, you should really pay attention to, what's going on here, what's the pattern, and why are you feeling guilty. So, well, no questions yet. So the other thing then that I want to mention is that True Love Fraud Stories podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts. And we're also in the process of putting the episodes up on YouTube and YouTube Music. So you can see it on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, any of those places, or here on YouTube and YouTube Music. So, well, looks like no questions today. So I thank you, everybody, for joining me. And then we'll actually next week, I'll be here on Wednesday. I have an obligation on Tuesday, and then after this time, we'll be back on Tuesdays after that. So next week on Wednesday, I look forward to seeing you and hope that you'll join me again for this episode of Love Fraud Live. Thank you very much. Good night.